Welcome to episode 300 of the To Be the Church podcast,
Hey-o.
where we explore what it truly means to be the church in today's culture. When we started this thing, Barack Obama was president. I had half the amount of kids I have now. You had one less child than you have now.
Yeah.
Our first episode was February 18th of 2015.
February 18th?
Yep, of 2015.
Oh, wow. My youngest, Viola, was born 2 weeks later.
Yeah, Ben, where were you in February of 2015? Were you still in college?
No.
Oh, okay.
Dallas, Oregon.
Dallas,
Yep.
Oregon. What were you doing that day?
I don't know. Youth pastoring it up. Yep.
Really? Good
Yep.
job. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. It's a good time in my life. A lot better than now. But
I don't remember episode 1, but here's our description of episode 1 for February 18th,
What do you
2015.
got?
The episode was called Expositional Preaching in Andrew's Face. Today we talk about our conviction to preach expositionally. That hasn't changed at all. The concept behind our current sermon series artwork, and how we interact with the church together. We'll cover why Andrew's face is swollen to twice its size.
Oh, dude. That would have been my first root canal situation.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. I got, oh man, that was bad, man. We recorded at that time.
I guess.
That got real bad. So I take this, those like table runners that like my wife has several of these like for different seasons, like Christmas ones and
Like
whatever.
the ones
But
that like,
yeah, they're like long things that you put on top of tables, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so like a table runner. And so she had this one for Thanksgiving or something that, yeah, it probably was. It was probably like a holiday one late in the year. And then it was like up in the laundry room, it needed to be washed. And so I did a lot of laundry in that season. My wife's pregnant, of course, at the time. And I think our oldest would have been like 7. So we had like 7, 5, 3, and then she was pregnant with number 4. So, or technically number 5, I guess. But that's a whole other story. But so I wash this table runner. I take it out of the washing machine. I'm going to put it in the dryer. But I grabbed it and I like shook it out, So I go to shake it out.
this is why people need to be watching on YouTube instead of just listening
Exactly,
on your podcast app, because there's visuals here.
As I go to shake it out, like snap it like you would a towel, right? Stop trying to make fun of me, Max. As I go to shake it out, I'm going like this in my teeth. I go, because you had never heard this story. Well, you were 4 at the time, Max. But I go like, and I'm like, and the only reason I knew I made that face is because when I did that, the bottom of it flicked up because I was holding it too high up, flicked up, and one of the beads hit me in my tooth right here and cracked my tooth. Within the week, it gets infected. I ended up having to have a root canal. The side of my head was swollen up, like ginormous. So that was the first episode.
are
of
there
To Be the Church
pictures of
podcast.
this somewhere?
Oh yeah. I would have this on my on my phone somewhere.
You got to have
I'll look
sermons too, like of your face real big, right?
No, they got me in. I remember because the dentist was like, we can't get you in for like 2 weeks. And I was like, can I send you a picture of my face? And they're like, yeah. And so I sent it in. They're like, come in right now. Please come in right now. So I went in and then I don't think I had a Sunday where it was super bad.
Okay.
But when would we have recorded at that time? Like late in the week, right? Maybe I
don't-
wasn't in the pulpit that day.
I don't know.
Oh man. Anyway, I'm going to find that picture. So you're telling me that's 2015?
Yep, February 2015
All
is
right,
when we
going
talked
back-
about it, at least. So
Searching the cloud right now.
That was actually when the my candidating for my job started, and then they hired me in 2020. So I was in process
Hey.
at that point.
hey, if you have any questions, you got to vet the guy,
Yeah.
I've been vetted. Yep.
But yeah, 300 episodes of this. It's been fun. If you would have told me 300 episodes ago that we'd be doing episode 300 at some point, I would have said, I think that Andrew and I are rather determined. I don't know if we're that determined, though.
Yeah.
But here we are. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things. It'd be interesting to go through, and maybe we'll have somebody do this, go through and figure out just how many minutes we've had of podcasts, because people, especially those of you, there's a handful of you who've been listening since day one, and so you've spent a lot of time with us, and so thank you for being here. Thanks for being here as we've done this, and we've talked about Andrew's face, lots of different people's faces, and and all sorts of stuff like that. One of the things we could not have foreseen in 2015 when we started this podcast was what 2020 had been. Right.
Yeah.
Quite a crazy year. Like I even said this at the beginning of the pandemic, but if you told me like how the church will be able to meet, like whenever we were able to come back, last June and the different types of things we would have to do to accommodate that, I would have like thought that we like lived in a Will Forte comedy show. You got the pictures?
Got the pictures, dude. Should I send some of these to Max?
Yeah, send them to Max because we'll overlay it on the YouTube video. And so, can I see that?
Pretty gnarly, dude.
That was all from a bead that hit your tooth.
Yeah,
dude, you kind of look like Jared C. Wilson. Think about it. Like, look at that. That's not like a negative against him. It's just like
it's not. I guess Jared could be the judge of that.
Sorry, Jared. You look like Ted Cruz. All right. So this question that we have for episode 300 today would not have made sense to us in 2015. It literally wouldn't have. But Brian, what do we got for today about COVID?
COVID and masks. Do you see wearing a mask as a question of conscience or a question of a Christian's submitting to secular authorities? Note, I'm not talking about those who can't wear them for health reasons. I do know many Christians differ on whether wearing a mask or not, or not wearing a mask is loving your neighbor, and that might be beyond what we can discuss in this conversation. Maybe a good TBTC question?
Interesting. There's a few questions there.
Yeah. So is wearing a mask a matter of conscience? Okay. Is it a matter of just submitting to secular authorities? And should we be doing it that way? And what about those who see wearing a mask as loving your neighbor?
Okay.
Again, 3 questions that would have made no sense to us when in February 2015. But.
Indeed. Oh man, that's gnarly. I'm looking at that picture of my small face. Sorry.
Focus, Andy.
Dude, don't you wish COVID would happen then so you could have covered that mug?
Exactly. All right. So Ben, well, we've had, I don't know, I don't feel like we've had a lot of mask controversy at our churches. It doesn't seem like, relative to the amount of people at the church and
there are definitely people who feel different about it. I've had
sure.
a lot of conversations with folks who either love the way we're approaching it, or don't love the way we're approaching it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But
it feels like our people relative to, having a lot of friends as we do in pastoral ministry and churches all around the country, like it feels like our people have remained pretty united, and if they've been upset one way or the other, they've handled it decently well. There's been some instances, but
yeah, I do think, I believe we talked about it on this podcast probably 10 episodes-ish ago, but just about the division happening in the church over COVID policy.
Yeah.
And, how pastors are getting the same but opposite frustrations every week where they're like, hey, I can't believe you're doing this about masks. And then someone from the complete other side being like, but you're not doing this about masks. And, and just the inability to please everyone, if you will, in that. And so, there's a lot there. Let's just start at the top though. Do you see wearing a mask as a matter of conscience?
Yeah, I do. I see it as a matter of conscience. I see it as a conscience issue. Even the second part of that, or as something to secular authorities, submission to secular authorities. I think that even within that, the spectrum on which you can argue, whether it's the scriptural passages or the framework of the American government and what the role of the citizen is versus what the role of the government is. So there's a lot of matters of conscience within that whole thing. And so my brief answer of my personal opinion would be I do see it as a matter of conscience, and I'm wary of my second part of that would be I'm wary of those who treat an issue of such complexity as if it's just super simple and cut and dry, because they're either not aware of how complex that issue is, the role of the state, the citizen, the American government, all those things, or they're just, and what I have found in most of these instances on the right and on the left in our culture is that a lot of people don't really, a lot of people who tend to just be super cut and dry are just parroting talking points from their favorite news show or the politician that they follow most closely or whatever else. And so I think that, and that's their matter of conscience to do that, but so feel free to disagree with me, Ben, and then punch me in the face.
No, not at all. I think especially at this stage of the whole COVID thing, I I think early on, none of us really knew. I mean, at least I speak for myself. I didn't know how serious or not serious it was, and I think now, like you said, there's it's complex, but I think there's just as good a reason to believe that masks don't do anything than there is to think that they really do.
Are you an epidemiologist? I'm just kidding.
I'm not.
That's the Twitter response.
Yeah, but I think.
But you do know how to read, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
So you're not an epidemiologist, but you read in English. So you come
Yeah.
to that, yeah.
And I think, just to kind of show my cards, like the validity of those, even at the governmental level, who are really still pushing the mask. I'm really calling into question now that people who are fully vaccinated are still being told to wear multiple masks. I just think kind of shows that there's a lot of the facts aren't really what's driving anything. It's fitting everything into a certain narrative on both sides. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of fear, and fear is a way that you can control people. And so I just don't like the people who are pushing masks, who are now still saying you need to double and triple up a mask once you're vaccinated. It's like, wait a second, maybe you were full of it from the beginning with masks.
Whoa, man, you're saying some pretty extreme things here.
Full of what?
Are you Q? Is he Q?
Yeah. No, but that being said, I do think it's a conscience issue. I don't have a problem with masks one way or the other. And that's kind of how we've led at the church. Like, yeah. I mean, I've tried to do my best even at the church with people I know that are concerned. I mean, I'll wear a mask to show love to them and respect them. And then others don't care as much about it, and I don't feel the need to. I don't have any problem with needing them to go into stores or go to your table at a restaurant. Like I'm not to the other extreme where it's like, if you give into this, then what about when they tell you to burn your Bibles? Are you just going to do that too? Like, I think that's also has some problems. So
sure,
I think there's nuance and complexity there. But yeah, I think it's not a black and white issue. It's a matter of conscience. And therefore, how I've pastored people with Romans 14 is like, if we let this divide us, a matter of conscience, then like we're letting the enemy kind of get an upper hand, because
that's good.
This isn't something that should divide us. We can have opinions about it and do our best to love each other through it, but it's not a clear-cut thing that we really should have. It's not a die for issue, in my opinion. So,
or you would say, or a divide issue, right?
Oh, exactly.
Not
It's not
issue.
a divide
Yep.
either. I think it's definitely a debate for.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I there's a lot of places or a lot of directions we could go with this, but you sent out an article, Andrew, to a bunch of our leadership earlier in the week about the article. We'll put in the show notes. It's called "Why Reformed Evangelicalism Has Splintered: 4 Approaches to Race, Politics, and Gender." And essentially, what Kevin DeYoung in this article does is he talks about like the 4 kind of stances people take on issues, right? And specifically in that reform world, and he does a good job here to not like put down any of these 4 approaches, but he uses positive words for each of the 4. So I'll just go over those real quick, and then we can talk about it as it relates to the mask thing.
You said that's in the show notes, right?
Yep. So people can
just plug for that article. It came out a month or so ago, but or maybe 2 months by the time this airs. But that is like Kevin DeYoung has a gift of taking complex issues that land all over the spectrum, but that have become talking points issues or political issues are really divisive. He has a gift, specifically a gift for maybe a spiritual gift, man, for like making these things very clear in a way that kind of can take the temperature down. So I sent this to all of our ministry staff, and I sent it to our elders and just said, just be ready to substantively dialogue on this in the coming weeks, because it's just a really valuable article.
Yeah, and when you first sent it out, I got it like 5 minutes before meeting, so I was just I'm just gonna like just real quick just scan it, and in my thought he was saying, here are the 4 ways, and here's one of them that's correct. And so I was like, wait, which one does he think's correct? And I couldn't tell. You know, and at one point he says, here's where I am on the spectrum
Yeah.
here. But here are the 4 areas, and they go from left to right. And if you think even like politically, they go from kind of left to right. Number 1 is contrite. And this is the person who says, look at the church's complicity in past and present evils. We've been blind to injustice, prejudice, racism, sexism, and abuse. What the world needs to see a church owning its sin and working in brokenness to make up for them and overcome them. Next on the spectrum, you'd have the one who's compassionate, who says this about whatever issue. Look at the many people hurting and grieving in our midst and in the world. Now is the time to listen and learn. Now is the time to weep with those who weep. What the world needs is a church that demonstrates the love of Christ. Next spot on the spectrum is the one who's careful. They say, look at the moral confusion and intellectual carelessness that marks our time. Let's pay attention to our language and our definitions. What the world needs is a church that will draw upon the best of its theological tradition and lead the way in understanding the challenges of our day. On the other end of the spectrum, number 4 there is courageous. Look at the church's compromise with, if not outright capitulation to, the spirit of our age. Now is the time for the trumpet blast, not for backing down. What the world needs is a church that will admonish the wayward, warn against danger, and stand as a bulwark for truth, no matter how unpopular. Yeah. And what he does in this article, I mean, he has a whole table just about race, about white supremacy, systematic racism, police shootings, critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, and how each of those four stances, if you will, approaches each of those issues. And then he has another table called politics and gender, and one of those columns is wearing masks.
Yeah.
And so let's just read those real quick, and then we can talk about, you know, maybe even where we stand on it versus, you know, like how you feel the church should, or like how we've approached it.
Yeah. Let me log in real quick. So I wrote those 4 down: contrite, compassionate, careful, courageous. Contrite being a 1, compassionate 2, careful 3, courageous 4. So as you read there, those are his general definitions. Those are his, basically the buckets, the different numbers on the spectrum. And then he goes through specifically on race, and then, like you said, other political issues. And for each one of those on the table, he talks about how the more contrite type, or the more compassionate type, or the careful type, or the courageous type, like what they're saying on that issue, or where they tend to land on it.
Yeah, so, and then he goes into how that's divided us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've made all these things divide 4 issues.
Yeah.
But all right, anyway, wearing masks. The contrite person says this. Oh, and one more note. He also makes it clear here that you're not just like contrite and that's just who you are across the board.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, I mean, there's going to be some variance here on where you feel based on the issue.
I might be a 1 on this issue, but a 4 on a different issue.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So the contrite person on wearing masks says, I feel unsafe and uncared for when masks aren't worn. Besides, COVID affects minority communities worse than others. That's what you might hear from the contrite person.
Yep.
The compassionate person, number 2 on the spectrum, would say, it's one small but important way to love your neighbor. The careful person would say, it's probably overblown and a bit frustrating, but let's just get through this. And number 4 would say, the courageous person would say, a sign of the government encroaching on our liberties. And so we have all these, we have Christians, people who long to follow Jesus, who are at each of these or at some varying level of these four spots on the spectrum. And so each of these 4, I would even say, might have a different nuance in what it means to love your neighbor as it relates to wearing masks. Mm-hmm. And so I've talked to people who go to church here who, you know, have been frustrated with some folks at our church not wearing masks.
Sure.
I can't believe they wouldn't love their neighbor like me. I can't believe they wouldn't love me by wearing a mask because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I've also talked to people that attend here that don't wear a mask and have been on the other end of that spectrum where like, you want to love your neighbor, stand up to the government. Like, yeah. You know, and so I think that's important here, is to understand that everyone's definition of loving your neighbor as it relates to this specific issue, because masks are not a die for or divide for issue, and they are actually not mentioned in Scripture to where we can be like, thou shalt wear a mask when told to by your governor. Yeah. Or in that clearly of terms. So
yeah, and that's good. And I think that's where an article like this is so helpful, because he not only has wearing masks, he has gender roles, he has Trump, kind of with these 4 different types of Christians thought about him, or the idea of Christian nationalism. He has all these different things. But on wearing masks specifically, I think what's helpful about this is to look and realize none of these, the contrite, compassionate, careful, courageous perspective on this, it's not like one is more necessarily moral than the other, or one is more biblical than the other. These are opinions that we have. Like, again, we started this with saying these are matters of, we are looking at this as a matter of conscience at this point. And but these are all very real feelings. I think of our congregation, and we have people in every one of these boxes here.
We might have people in our elder team in every one of these boxes.
100%. Yeah, we do. I would say we probably do that on this issue specifically take that contrite perspective, or that compassionate perspective, or that careful perspective, or that courageous perspective. And I think recognizing that, and then he summarizes in the article toward the end, like, generally speaking, the people, the 1 and the 4 are the two polar ends of the spectrum, right? The two that kind of shout at each other in culture. And a lot of, if you're in these more moderate positions of the middle two, the 2 and the 3, a lot of times the 3s are wanting the 1s to, to kind of come over a little bit, and the 2s are wanting the 4s to kind of back off a little bit. But I think it's helpful just to recognize that Christians can differ on things like this, and it doesn't mean we should divide over it. We can talk through these things. And I think the one of the things I was thinking about this subject, though, on loving your neighbor, that's how did the question asker ask it? Let me look back at the question here. They said, I know many Christians differ on whether wearing a mask or not is loving your neighbor, and that might be beyond what we can discuss in this conversation. I think we can discuss that. So is this an issue of loving your neighbor or not? If it is, say so. If it's not, why not? Or what would you guys say on that?
I think it is loving, not in the sense that I think, because someone would say you're not loving me by wearing it, could be saying because, you're going to give me COVID and I'm going to die, and that's not loving. I think the more I would view it as loving your neighbor, not because of that, but because of if someone has a different view of this, or a different opinion, different something in their conscience about it. I think scripturally we could go to different places where it is loving to not cause them to stumble, to not cause unnecessary offense. And so that's why I said kind of my opinion is, if I know it really is a big deal to someone, I'm willing just to and I don't view it as compromise, just to say, hey, I know they really want me to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. I'm going to wear it. I mean, it depends on the situation, but especially with brothers and sisters in Christ, I think both sides, that is a way to respect someone else's difference in conscience, and then say, I'm going to do my best to accommodate you, not because I agree with you, but because I'm trying to bear with you in love. I'm trying to, show love in that way. And so I'd say it's loving your neighbor in that way, not in the sense that if you don't wear a mask, that you don't love them because you don't care if they get sick and die.
And that's my response on the loving your neighbor thing. The second thing, or the last thing you said there, is that the narrative that's been given to us, the loving your neighbor narrative that's been given to us by specific politicians, is that what I'm saying to do here is loving your neighbor, and if you don't, that means you want them to die. That means you don't care. And so it's almost become this litmus test for whether or not someone has compassion, or whether or not someone cares, or those kind of things. And I think I'm very, very wary of that language regarding this specific thing, knowing that I keep track of politics close enough to know that the loving your neighbor argument also is utilized in politics to refer to any policy that a politician brings out. If you don't support spending this amount of money in this area, you don't love people, or you're a racist. Or if you don't support the women's right to choose, this is actually the same argument is made by the same politicians that say, the loving your neighbor mask thing. If you don't say a woman should have the right to abort a baby in her womb, you don't care about women. You don't love your neighbor. You don't love women. And so that's where, and again, that's a different political issue, but I'm just saying that jargon gets utilized in the political landscape a lot. And I think we need to know the difference between rhetoric and reality as it relates to these things. And so could you have COVID symptoms and maybe be positive and not get tested and be in close proximity to another person and cough on them and be irresponsible and unloving to them? Yes, 100%. Of course you could be. That's in the realm of possibility, right? So you could actually, in this area, refuse to wear a mask and not be loving. That is possible. But at the same time, simply to equate, this needs to be exactly where you land on masks, or you don't love your neighbor. Those are both, to me, like going a little bit too far, you know?
All right, let's close this epic, momentous 300th episode of TBTC with maybe a lightning round. And so I'll bring up some scripture that I've heard used to talk one way or the other about masks and COVID.
Oh, wow.
And just let's hear what your overall take is. And Ben mentioned one of them. So you have the 1 Corinthians 8. So I've heard, like, if you just replace food offered to idols with the word masks, you get a clear picture of how you can, like, appeal to another's conscience, right? So what would you say to the person who says that? Not all at once.
You brought it up, Ben.
What are you asking specifically?
Just like what do you think of the validity of that argument? Like, if you replace the words "food offered to idols" with the word
Wearing
masks, then like that should tell you how you should respond to COVID issues as it relates to your loving.
And
your
the
neighbor.
issue there is the weaker conscience, and if Paul's saying if it violates their conscience, I'm not going to do it simply for the sake of their conscience, and you know.
Yeah, I think there are some principles that you could pull out from there that would apply to relationships and how you're interacting with others on these things. But I don't, I would go, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to think more about that. I was thinking more of like Romans 14, matters of conscience, like don't cast judgment on one another for those things. And so food offered to idols is, we'd have to, that is more tied to religious, worship and those sorts of things. And people coming from a Gentile pagan past into Christianity and what that looks like. So that's a little bit more specific, but there are some principles I think you could pull out. If someone is offended by something, you should not go out of your way to cause that offense, I think.
Yeah. Now, and I would, though, on that, specifically on the scripture you're talking about there, Ty, I would want to put the foot on both shoes, or put the shoe on both feet there, because I think at the same time we're saying the person who thinks you should wear a mask is the one with a weaker conscience. What if the person who doesn't think you should wear a mask is the one with a weaker conscience there? Like, should you then not wear a mask so that they don't stumble? Like in light of this whole issue. So that's where I just say, like, yeah, let's be careful what we're doing exegetically there.
All right, so maybe this won't be a lightning round. Maybe we'll move like a low rumbling thunder round.
Yeah,
a little
like
longer.
The storm's a couple miles away.
Yeah.
I blame myself, but mostly Ben.
So let's go to the next chapter, 1 Corinthians 9, because I've heard this one, become all things to all people. Like, so you walk up to somebody and it's like, oh, are they sensitive? Should I put one on? Are they not? Should I not? Like, what do you say to the person who says, like, that's my approach, where I'm going to become all things to all people? And they use that verse for that.
I get that in the context of a local church where you're trying to love your brothers and sisters, fellow members well, and you know them and you know where they stand. There's no way to know in regards to strangers how they feel about masks and try to like navigate that. So that's an evangelistic text from Paul. He's speaking about becoming all things to all people so you might win them for Christ. And so I don't know if I don't know if I'd take it to say mask, like we need to wear masks so that we can win people to Christ.
Yeah, it's not a great, perfect correlation. There's some discontinuity there, certainly, but I don't. In practice, I tend to, because to get into stores and stuff in our state, you have to wear masks. So I tend to have a mask on me at all times, and I don't walk closely. I don't get close to people anyway. I'm kind of a I'm not like a close talker, to reference Seinfeld, but I tend to, if there's a group of people that are like masked up, I tend to throw the mask on as if I was to walk into that group of people, and if there's a people who are not, and I tend to not have that mask on. So
all right, so we got two more here. What about the people who point to Romans 13 and just say, submit to the authorities? The Bible says it. It's really clear. Do what your government says to do.
Authority, submission to, or Romans 13, what did I call that? Government submission absolutis. That's my term for that. Through this whole issue. And I think I have a lot of, and I don't have, it's a lightning round, so I don't have time to go into super detail, but I might say to that person, I do not think that means what you think it means. That might be my response there.
All right. So that might be a follow-up for somebody.
Sure.
Wants to
and
talk
we could
about
do
that.
a longer episode on it,
Yeah,
but I don't think that means what you might think it means.
All right. Last one here.
Ben got out of
Oh,
that
sorry.
one?
You want to say anything?
We have to consider what the governing authorities are saying, but yeah, it's not a black and white that you do whatever the government says because they're the government. That's not what that text means.
All right. Okay. So last
There you go.
last scripture here, Exodus 20. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Here's a viewpoint. Wearing a mask is bearing false witness. If I wear a mask because it makes you feel comfortable, but it actually does nothing, I'm supporting your lie.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting use of that. Bearing false witness is a sin, but
We're not under the old covenant, so I don't listen to Exodus.
Wow.
Stop it.
Please, somebody put that into like a little clip and play that for everyone.
There's something
Cam
called
Google.
New Covenant, and there's discontinuity.
Lie all you want in the new covenant.
Exactly.
That again is there's these logical jumps that have to be made with some of these that you go like so for that one to work, I probably to every one of these I could have said I do not think that means what you think it means, but for that one to work, you have to then, and that's the difficulty of this entire foggy situation. And I think the fog is clearing. I think there's less fog today than there has ever been. And that with the nature of the way media and everything works, and just the way a virus works and the way science works and these kind of things, it takes time. But I think it's becoming clearer and clearer. A lot of these issues on COVID and what this whole lockdown situation, all that has become. I mean, I was listening to an interview last night of a guy who's already written a book, published a book on the economic strategy and the economic response of world governments on COVID, and it was a really, really good interview. But I just think these things are becoming clearer and clearer, and so this will be a fun episode to look back on in time. But yeah, there's certain leaps I think that you have to make to say that that all mask wearing is superfluous, totally superfluous. And there's no, I don't think masks are what we've been told that they are. And yet at the same time, yeah, I think there's some leaps you got to make to say that like simply now I don't wear masks to signal like if you've had COVID, now that there's 100 million plus people vaccinated and a couple million more every day, it's like there are still states, including ours, that are like going to ride the mask mandate into the sunset, dude. Like it'll have 95% of our people vaccinated and we'll still be told we need to wear masks. So like, those are the things I think that the citizenry is kind of getting wise to a little bit and going, so anyway.
All right. Well, we did it. We solved it. We solved the masks in the church argument.
Now that we didn't have
Just
a lot
kidding.
of issues with that over the last year, now
Yeah.
we're gonna have a bunch because we did an episode.
Yeah, because we talked about it.
Thanks,
Hey,
Tyler.
if we're not spending our 300th episode doing something that's going to make everybody angry, because we talked, we're not doing it right. But Andrew, it's been a fun 300 episodes so
Yeah,
far.
buddy.
Max has been here for all 300 of them. He's been around for those.
Has he?
I texted him during the thing, and he said, "Yep, he was here when we started in 2015. Been here for about the last 100. Cody, you've been here. I mean, you've been around NGC for the whole time, but like you've been involved in the last probably 100-ish.
He left us for a little bit there.
Yeah, he went to college and did you listen to the podcast while you were in college? He's shaking his head no and saying all the time. Brian's been with us here for the last handful of episodes, and it's been fun. Now, this is one of those that probably did bring up a lot of questions. Feel free to hit us up with your questions. Podcast at tobeTheChurch.com. Social media at tobeTheChurch. We're on YouTube. If you didn't know that, we would love to see you on YouTube. We would love it if you would like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But otherwise, we'll see you for episode 301 next Friday.